Hello everyone, here Claude Haggerty here. Welcome to my video series where I interview successful entertainers to learn what makes them tick. It is amazing what we can learn from each other. One good idea can lead to a tremendous opportunity. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing a professional ventriloquist, Mr. Tom Crowl. Now before we get Tom on the phone, I wanted to show you a brief YouTube clip of Tom in action, which was actually taken from a performance clip in 2011 where Tom was performing for a corporate event.
I bet you're all right. Rash? No, I do. Wait a minute, yes I do. You don't show it to Daddy. No! Here's your hand. You have got to be kidding me. You're next. I thought I was constipated. Would you stop? I heard you got a bell going. Can you just help me? I guess I have to. Why are you shaking? I know where your head is. You are a sick man. You're a puppet, that's how you work. You're sick, that's how you roll. What are you going to do to entertain everybody here at the club tonight? I'm going to dance. Yes or no? Do you want to dance with these folks tonight? Yes, I do. I'm so screwed.
Let's see if we can get a hold of Tom on Skype. Hello Tom, how are you this evening?
Doing great, Claude. Thanks for having me here tonight.
I believe you're from the Westminster, Maryland area?
Outside of Baltimore.
And how's the weather there these days?
It's a little chilly. I would rather be in Florida right now.
I hear you. So Tom, tell us how you became a ventriloquist.
Well, I started out actually as a magician, and I did magic, went full-time in magic in 1984, and in about 2005, my wife decided that she wanted to pursue her own career. We were doing an illusion show, and I was left with what basically amounted to a kids program. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted to do corporate and adults. And I had a friend, this is about 2005, who it was technically one of the best events in the world, and I called him up and I said, would you work with me? So he gave me some different sources to pull in information, and I started studying in 2005. In 2006, I switched over and started doing Vent full-time. It's been excellent for me. I got in right before Jeff Dunham became huge, right before Terry Fator won America's Got Talent, and so the popularity of Vent went through the roof, and I've been riding high ever since, and it's still strong. It's currently, I think, one of the strongest variety art forms out there.
Ventriloquism seems to be bigger than ever. I'm sure with all the exposure on AGT and with headliners like Terry in Vegas and with all the exposure on YouTube, I'm sure it all helps.
Oh, it definitely helps. You could, but even though as famous as Jeff, because I think last year Jeff made somewhere around $30 million.
Wow.
Yeah, not bad, not chump change. But as popular as he is, and he sells out 11,000 seat, arenas, there's still a lot of people who don't know who he is, who don't know who Terry Fator is. But there's a power in puppets, and anyone who has ever, taken a puppet on stage with any confidence realizes that audiences are drawn to them. It's the Muppets. It's the that kind of the animatronic thought of it, and it just appeals to people on a very basic level. Puppets have a lot of power, and most people don't realize it.
Yeah, it seems fitting that you were a magician and now you create the illusion that your puppets are real.
Most certainly. That, in fact, ventriloquism is known as the illusion of life. People get it confused. They think, well, it's moving my lips. No, a good ventriloquist makes the puppet seem alive and a separate entity. You're not concentrating on the fact that the ventriloquist is operating because it seems to be two different personalities on the stage. And that's one of the biggest things that I try to teach in the course that I created. You want to have that puppet perceived as a separate entity.
I've heard of your partner on stage being referred to as a puppet or a dummy or a doll. Tom, is there a difference?
Ventriloquists go on different rampages. Some, like magicians, some people want to call themselves illusionists. Some people want to call them, you're a magician, and you might specialize in a certain area. And it's the same thing with ventriloquist figures. I use both soft figures and I have hard figures. The standard ventriloquist dummy is called a hard figure. They're also called dummies, figures, puppets. So really, I it as a puppet is something that you're using. It's an instrument, and so most people associate puppet with like the Muppet style figures. The ones I have behind me are soft figures. Most people consider those puppets.
Let's say I took your course and I was interested in purchasing a dummy. Where would I go to find one? I'm sure there's a lot to learn, and I'm sure you get what you pay for.
I think one of the most important things that I try to teach very early in the course is that you really don't need a figure to start, or a puppet. I've got people who are learning with the cheap hand puppets. Give you a good example. Ron Lucas, who was a major star back in the 80s and early 90s, used to do a whole routine with nothing more than his hand. And he'd start out with his hand, and then he'd put a sock on, and eventually he hung a little board over it, and it looked like a turtle. It's really you. It's not the puppet. And that's one mistake that I made as a beginner, and a lot of ventriloquists and people who are interested in it make as beginners. They buy a puppet because they think it's really cool. They think, I can do a lot with that puppet. But really, it's a matter of creating a character around that puppet. If you don't have a well-defined character, then the puppet is nothing. But if you develop the character first and then find a puppet that matches it, then you've got something you can work with and something you're going to be able to take to another level. There are places that you can get puppets. Axtell Puppets makes incredible stuff for both magicians and ventriloquists. We've got, behind me, I've got Mary Ann Taylor puppets. I've got Jet, which is the dummy shop. They make puppets, and there are a wide variety of figure builders. A good friend of mine, Mike Palma, out of Florida, builds the hard figures. There's Albert Alfaro, who makes some incredible, very lifelike, detailed figures. For a soft puppet, you might spend anywhere from $50 for a cheap one, up to some of the ones that I use are anywhere between $500 and $1,000. For the hard figures, you're looking at a lot more. Dan Pays puts out a relatively good hard figure. I think his start somewhere around the $500 to $600 range. I know when, yeah, no, and they're most of the moving mouth. Sometimes they'll have the moving eyes. Some of the other figures are going to be going for anywhere from $1,500 up to $5,000, $10,000, depending on what you want, the reputation of the maker, and their quality. Another thing that I don't recommend is going out and getting every bell and whistle. A lot of guys, they want, I want the ears to wiggle, and I want the tongue to stick out, and the eyebrows to go up and down. Everything that you get on a puppet, it requires you to move with your fingers. You're working with one hand in that control stick. So if you get a lot of different features, all of a sudden your fingers have to do all this extra work, and it's harder to hold, it's harder to learn, it takes you a lot longer. One of the most famous ventriloquist figures of all time was Charlie McCarthy. And Charlie McCarthy, his eyes didn't move. Walter, Jeff Dunham's Walter, his eyes don't move. It's all in the manipulation and the way Jeff is able to control that figure so that it creates the attitude of Walter. A lot of the soft figures, their eyes don't move. The Muppets, their eyes don't usually move.
I didn't know that. I watched the Muppets hundreds of times, and I did not realize that their eyes didn't move.
Some of them may. I don't want to come off sounding like I'm an expert on all the Muppets, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Kermit's eyes don't move. He was a sock puppet when he was invented, and I'm trying to think. There's a large number of them. They might have some that blink now, but most of them, it's just the way they turn their head and the way they gaze at you. It just creates that illusion that they're alive. And believe in them because they're well-defined characters.
I guess it all comes down to skill, presentation, and your ability to create the illusion. Well, I'm sure you could take a professional ventriloquist with a sock on his hand, and he or she would get a standing ovation, and yet you could take a amateur with a state-of-the-art puppet and they would bomb.
It's just like with magic. You get people who pick up a magic trick and they don't get any response, and you pick up somebody, get somebody else who can really sell it to the crowd and play with it. They get something. And with ventriloquism, it's really a matter of developing a good contrasting personality for that character that you can create a dialogue around and write some great material. Because as I found out when I started, if you're not getting laughs, you're dying. You're alone up there with a puppet on your hand. So it takes it takes a little bit of guts. It takes a little bit of practice. It's not something you do right off the bat. It takes a little bit of building, but anybody can do it. And I was an old dog at that point. I'd been doing magic for a long time, and within a year I was able to start doing it. And once I transferred over, the career has been amazing ever since.
That was going to be my next question. How long would it take one to practice before they could become a ventriloquist? The average person, if I wanted to learn just the basics so I could go and actually perform a little bit of ventriloquism, would it take the average person like 6 months, a year? Like, how long would it take, Tom?
You know something? I'm not going to say that because everybody is different. There used to be a thing where you could learn ventriloquism in 30 days. You might learn it in 30 days. It's going to take you a lifetime to perfect it. I'm still, every day, I work on my skills. And the pros that I know, every day they work on their skills. If they don't, you lose them. I like to consider it like juggling. Juggling is a skill that if you can't do it well, the audience is going to notice. Now, you might be able to play it up and entertain them, and with the fact that you're bad and play it off that way. And there are that. It's really going to depend on you, how you relate to the audience, and how much time you want to put into it. The best thing about it is it's fun. It's not like, I have to set a practice time and get in front of a mirror and watch every day. I did that when I started, but I can, practice when I'm driving down the road. I can practice when I'm shaving, in the morning. I can do it anywhere. And it's fun. It's just fun to do.
What would you say was the biggest difference in working as a professional magician versus working as a professional ventriloquist?
One thing that's really important to understand is there's very few ventriloquists in the world. Now, Claude, you're a magician, correct?
Yeah, I performed 11,000 magic shows so far.
Okay. And how many magician illusionists are in the world?
I don't know. I say there's thousands of magicians out there, I guess. Something like that. I know there's a lot.
But when you look at magic, there are magicians everywhere because everybody calls themselves a magician that picks up a magic trick. With ventriloquism, everybody who picks up a puppet cannot call themselves a ventriloquist. So you're looking from thousands down to a very small number of ventriloquists. And that's what I found when I made that transition. I went from being one of many to one of a very few. And a good ventriloquist can command a top dollar, and they're going to get it, because it's something audiences don't see all the time. So, should you do it? I'd say you're an entertainer, you want to learn to entertain an audience, learn as many skills as you can from as many ways you can. Learn about magic, learn about juggling, learn about mime, learn about dance, learn about ventriloquism, learn about hypnosis. Learn as many as you can and figure out a way to meld them into your own act, and then you're a one of a kind, not a one of a many.
Now, Tom, you have an online course called Learn Ventriloquism, where you offer free lessons on how to become a ventriloquist. How long have you had this course on the market?
The course started about 2012, the very beginning of 2012. I had people coming up to me after shows going, "Can you teach me how to do ventriloquism?" And the answer was no. I really don't have the time. My performance schedule takes up so much of my time, and I value my private time. I didn't want to have to set a schedule where I'd meet with somebody, as many times as it would take to teach them. So I decided, I came across a software. A friend of mine showed me a membership software that allowed me to release courses incrementally. So every day I could release a video that would teach somebody, and we do it virtually. Put the course together as an idea to sell to people who came up to talk to me after my show. put a couple of my ventriloquist friends through it, and they were just amazed because nobody had ever done this type of ventriloquism. It was always you learn from a book or you learn from a DVD. And the biggest problems with those two methods, with a book, you couldn't really see how it was done. You couldn't hear the sounds, and they were difficult to describe. You're talking about how your tongue is moving in your mouth. Very difficult to describe, picture, and then translate that into your own mouth. With videos, a lot of people would, when you watch a DVD, I'm willing to bet you probably watch it beginning to end if you have the time. Most people would do that with these DVDs. They watch it and they go, okay, I want to learn the cool stuff. I want to learn how to say the letters without moving my lips, or I want to learn how to say a B or a P, because you can't do those without moving your lips, or you can, but it takes a little practice. And they miss the fundamentals. So when I created the course, I started by offering 5 free lessons that are really the fundamentals. I get a lot of people who go through those 5 lessons, and they'll say to me, well, you didn't really teach me anything. For those people, I just look at them and just shake my head and say, maybe you want to go do something else, because the fundamentals that I teach you are what makes the course easier when you get inside. Breathing, okay? A lot of people, I know how to breathe. If you were a singer, you have to learn how to control your diaphragm, control your air movement. But you're talking for 2 people. You're doing it in a resonant voice. You're letting the air out through your mouth and your nose, which I go to, into in the course. But it's like having a balloon that's open at 2 ends, and the air is going to get out quicker. So if you don't learn to breathe properly and control the airflow, you're not going to make the character sound believable, because as he's talking, his voice is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. So the first, as I say, the 5 free lessons that I offer are all, the basic building blocks. I talk about creating a character. Don't waste your money on a bunch of puppets that we talked about here briefly. Once they get into the course, there's so much information in there, and it's literally, I still feel to this day, I'm involved with Mayor Studios, which is putting out other courses, but I still feel that my online course is the best way to get started, because it goes through everything, has a very active forum in there where ventriloquists answer questions, and I don't want this to sound like a big pitch for the course, but if anybody's interested, I highly recommend they come over and at least try out the 5 free lessons and have some fun with it.
And I think it's great that you offer the 5 free lessons so that someone who may be interested in ventriloquism can learn the basics, learn how to breathe, etc., before they go spend $1,000 on a puppet.
Well, that's it. And so many, there's a lot of free YouTube videos. And when I started putting this thing together, I looked at a lot of these things, and I was just shaking my head, because these guys are, hobbyists who, maybe play with a little bit on the side, and they're not teaching the right instruction. It drives me nuts when I hear a ventriloquist try to substitute a D for a B. And that's what a lot of these people teach. So instead of saying boy, they're saying doy. Doesn't sound right. And the excuse that ventriloquists who teach that, they're like, well, doy isn't a word, and so people naturally assume you said boy. No, they don't. They sit there and go, that doesn't sound right. And that's the way I've been. So I teach them how to say a B. I teach them how to say a P. And it's basically taking the sound and modifying it. If they go through the 5 free lessons and they're interested, they can sign up. It's not $2,000. It's $97. And it gives them another 5 lessons that they have a chance to decide whether or not they want to continue. That way, you've got 10 lessons, and there's no obligation. And I do 100% refund. This isn't a course that I put together to make money. It's a course I put together to teach people. And I make my living as a performer. I fly around the United States doing shows for corporate events. This is just a way to help other people who want to learn. And I can't, whether people it's for them or not, I don't know. But you're right. If they go through the 5 free lessons, they go, this isn't for me. Or even if they want to go through the first 10 and they say, it isn't for me. And there's a link at the bottom of every email. All you have to do is click that and say, I don't want any more emails from you. I drop off the face of the earth to them.
At the end of the free lessons, they would either A, know that this is not for me, or B, I would assume that they would think that, okay, I really enjoy this, and now might be the time for more training, or they might be looking for a puppet now, but at least they've had that free trial to see if they actually enjoy ventriloquism, whether they can, learn the basics. So I think it's really cool that you're offering these free lessons there, Tom.
Well, for $97 for 10 lessons, the first 5 are free, the next 5 are $97. For 10 lessons,
well, no, there's 36 total. Okay, there's the 36 lessons and 2 bonus articles. So that's what the $97 is. But the first 10, the first 5 they take for free. There's $97 charge to join the course. But if they go through lesson 10 and they say this isn't for me, I refund the $97. So they got 10 lessons for free. It's a course that was put together by a pro who is working. And I think that's one of the big things, like I said, with the YouTube videos. There are guys who just play with it as a hobby. They're not teaching it properly. I'm able to give insights from my own experiences, and I learned from a bunch of different sources, in addition to Ken, who was my mentor. So I took private lessons. I took written courses. I did all the DVDs. I probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars in ventriloquism courses and lessons. And I'm basically boiling all that down, all that content down, and presenting it to somebody virtually. And they get the benefits. If you went to a ventriloquist to try to learn this stuff, Ken Groves, who, like I say, mentored me, Mark Wade out of Florida, there's other guys who do this, Sammy King, they're going to charge you $100 an hour. And they're going to sit down and they're going to give you one thing to work on. And they're going to work with you a little bit during that hour, and then they're going to send you off, and you're going to have to come back the next week. And it's going to be a multi-week thing. With what I teach, if you decide you want to perform, even if it's just, I'm going to do something for churches or I'm going to do something for my school, you can make $97 back in no time. And this is a career that literally, it supports my family, my son's in college, so you can make money in this business.
I'm going to put a link below the video for the 5 free lessons, and I'm sure those of us who try the lessons will have some fun. And I know I'm going to give it a try.
Great. I'd say give it a shot, because you never, as a performer, you're actually an entertainer. That's really what you are. And if you can entertain an audience one thing, and then can expand it and show them something they haven't seen, you're adding and turns. Singers can dance. I've seen ventriloquists who do magic, magicians who do ventriloquism. There's Terry Fader who can do both. He sings and he does ventriloquism. Made a fortune through America's Got Talent. Won the contest, now has the highest contract out in Las Vegas.
Do you have any plans on touring Canada anytime soon?
Well, I've been up there visiting, but I've never had a chance to perform up there. It was a small request, and I say to the agent, okay, figure out all the visas and stuff, and then I don't hear back. So they want me to do it. It's like, no. But the last thing I want to do is come into another country illegally. I don't think that would be right. But but if I do get up, my son's in Rochester, which is right below. Yeah.
I'm sure you appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening, and I know I'm going to sign up for the free lessons, and I'll include the link below the video for those of you who would like to try these free lessons with Tom. I highly encourage it. It'll be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Claude. I appreciate your time. Enjoyed talking with you.
Don't forget to sign up for the free ventriloquist lessons below with Tom Crowl. Claude Haggerty here. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Tom Crowl. And Tom's website is www.comedyventriloquist.com. And I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks again to Tom Crowl for joining us this evening, and where we learn from entertainers to find out what makes them tick. I'll talk to you soon.